पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर् द्यौः शान्तिर् दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशाः शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर् वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर् नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौः शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे अस्तु शान्तिः. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Magedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We begin today on verse number 9. We saw in the last class how Arjuna requests Krishna that he wants to see the divine form, Krishna as he truly is. And then in verse number 8 we saw Krishna told him that you cannot see me as I am through these sense organs. So I'll give you this divine eyes. In other words, if we have to experience the being, the reality, which is beyond the senses, these senses are completely useless. Not only are they useless, they are also a hindrance. If we enter a dark room, a room which is completely pitch dark, where you can't see anything at all, then your sense of perception, sense of seeing is useless because you can't see anything. And at that time, your other senses become more active, or at least you become aware of those senses more when one of your senses fails. For instance, as I said, if you go into a completely dark place where you cannot see, where you have to depend on your sense of touch, then your sense of touch becomes very, very powerful, because you concentrate more, because you know that that's the only way you can proceed in the dark, because this sense has become useless. But when we can see things, sometimes our other senses may not be as active. That's why people stumble and fall, because we think we can see, but we are not always aware of what the sense of touch. So sometimes our senses help us get in touch with the world, but they also hide the things which are beyond the senses. The only way to get in touch with the reality which is beyond the senses is to try to shut the senses first. And that is what most of us try to do, not always very successfully, when we try to meditate. Why do we need to close our eyes while meditating? If you are thinking of God, meditating on God, we should be able to do anytime. And that's true. Theoretically, yes. But practically, if my eyes are open, I'm going to get distracted by so many things around. Then it will be difficult for me to try to see God with my eyes open. So what I try to do is I close my eyes. So I'm trying to shut down my sense of seeing. Also, we find it is easier to pray and meditate when you are in a quiet place. You can put earplugs if you want, but if you go to a quiet spot, you are not exactly shutting down, but exactly you are not feeding anything to your sense of hearing. Also, it's a good practice not to be eating while you're meditating. So your sense of taste can distract you. So what we try to do while meditating is, as far as we can, try to stop feeding our different senses. Only then there is some hope that we might be able to get in touch with that being who is beyond the senses. And that is what Krishna is referring to here, that if you want to see me as I am, these eyes are useless. So let me give you divine eyes. Now, divine eyes is not like sometimes in mythology, or sometimes they will show some of the Hindu deities with a third eye. And some New Age religion, they speak about some third eye, etc. Now, it doesn't like there is something else is going to pop up here. It will be really very weird if something comes up there. What it really means is this, that these senses that we have now, they do a good job in helping us get in touch with this world. They don't do a good job. They're completely useless in getting to know the reality which is beyond this world. And so the divine eyes really stands for this spiritual intuition which is there in a dormant form within all of us. So we have these divine eyes, divine ears, all so-called divine things is really nothing but this refined sense of spiritual intuition. Now, that intuition remains dormant in most people. It's only, why is it said, for instance, that blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God? So, purity of heart really means the ability to go beyond our senses. So, leading a life which is based on certain values, certain principles, on truthfulness, honesty, unselfishness, and inner discipline, self-restraint. These are the things that help purify me. These are the things that help clarify my vision. These are the things that will help open up the divine eye, so to speak. That is why in that Gayatri prayer, Dhiyo Yonaf Prachodayat, the last part of that prayer really means awaken my spiritual intuition. So only when that spiritual intuition is awakened will we have a chance to experience the reality of God. And so that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna here, that I will help open up that spiritual intuition in your heart through which you will be able to see me. Let's chant together, verse 9. Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva tato rajan mahayogeshvaro harihi darshayamasa parthaya paramam rupamaishwaram. Sanjaya said, O king, having spoken thus, Hari, the great lord of yoga, next showed to Partha the supreme divine form. Now in the series of verses that follow is the description of the form that Arjuna saw, and then also Arjuna's own experience. Arjuna himself describes what he is seeing. So we are going to do a lot of chanting together today. And in the end, then we will try to understand the significance of what Arjuna saw, the significance of this divine form. So as we chant, this is a kind of a meditation in itself. Just try to put yourself in Arjuna's place. Think that you are Arjuna, and this is what you are seeing. So just kind of be there, and even when we are reading it, chanting it, try to visualize it in your mind's eye. And then we will all try to figure out what does it all mean. So let's all chant together. Verse 10. Aneka vaktranayam Anekadbhuta darshanam Aneka divyabharanam Divyanekodyatayudham. Having many mouths and eyes, and containing many a wonderful sight, with many heavenly ornaments and wielding many heavenly uplifted weapons. 11. Divyamalyambaradharam Divyagandhanulepanam Sarvascharyamayam Devam Anantam Vishwato Mukham. Wearing celestial garlands and apparel, anointed with heavenly perfumes, full of wonders, resplendent, infinite, and having faces on every side. 12. Divi Surya Sahasrasya Bhavet Yugapaduttita Yadibha Sadrushi Sasyat Bhasastasya Mahatmanaha. If the effulgence of 1,000 suns were to appear in the skies simultaneously, it might compare somewhat with the splendor of that great form. 13. Tatraikastham jagat kritsnam pravibhaktamane kadha apashyad devadevasya sharire pandavastada. Then the son of Pandu saw the entire universe with its manifold divisions united there in the body of the God of gods. 14. Tatassa vismaya vishto rishta roma dhananjayaha pranamya shirasa devam kritanjalirabhashata. Then Dhananjaya, filled with wonder and his hairs standing on end, bowing his head before the Lord, said with joined palms. Arjuna Uvacha Pashyami Devam Stava Deva Dehe Sarvams Tatha Bhuta Vishesha Sanghan Brahmanamisham Kamalasanastham Rishimscha Sarvan Uragamscha Divyan. Arjuna said, in your body, O Lord, I see the gods, as also all the hosts of various beings, Brahma, the ruler, seated on his lotus seat, all the heavenly sages and serpents. 16. Anekabahu Daravaktra Netram Pashyami Tvam Sarvato Nantarupam Nantam na madhyam na punastavadim Pashyami Vishveshvara Vishwarupa. I see you with many hands, bellies, mouths, and eyes, possessing infinite forms on every side. O Lord of the universe, O you of universal form, I see, however, neither your end, nor middle, nor your beginning. 17. Kiritinam gadinam chakrinancha Tejo rashim sarvato deeptimantam Pashyami tvam durniriksham samantat Deeptanalarkadyutimaprameyam. I see you all around with the diadem, mace, and disc, a mass of light resplendent on all sides, blinding with the effulgence of the blazing fire and sun, and immeasurable. 18. Tvamaksharam paramam veditavyam Tvamasya vishvasya param nidhanam Tvamavyaya shashvata dharma gopta Sanatanastvam purusho mato me. You are the imperishable, the supreme, the thing to be known. You are the supreme resting place of this universe. You are undecaying and the preserver of the eternal religion. I regard you as the primeval being. 19. Anadi madhyantam ananta viryam Ananta bahum shashi surya netram Pashyami tvam deepta hutasha vaktram Swatejasa vishvamidam tapantam. I see you as one with no beginning, middle, or end, of infinite prowess, with infinite arms, with the sun and moon for your eyes, and the blazing fire in your mouths, scorching this universe with your radiance. 20. Dyava prithivyo ridamantaram hi Vyaptam tvayaikena dishascha sarvaha. Drishtvad-bhutam rupa-mugram tavedam. Lokatrayam pravyathitam mahatman. This space betwixt heaven and earth is pervaded by you only, as also all the quarters. Seeing this wonderful, terrible form of yours, the three worlds are extremely afflicted, O great soul. 21. Ami hitvam surasangha vishanti. Kechid bhita pranjalayo grinanti. Swasti tyuktva maharshi siddha sanghaha. Stuvanti tvam stutibhiv pushkalabhihi. Verily, these hosts of gods are entering into you. Some being frightened are praising you with joined palms, while the bands of great sages and perfected souls, uttering the word peace, are praising you with numerous hymns. 22. Rudraditya vasavo yecha sadhya. Vishveshvinau marutaschoshmapascha. Gandharva yaksha surasiddha sangha. Vikshante tvam vismitaschaiva sarve. The Rudras, the Adityas, the Vasus, and the Sadhyas, the Vishwadevas, the two Ashwins, the Maruts, the Mains, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Asuras, and bands of Siddhas, all these are verily looking at you aghast. 23. Rupam mahatte bahuvaktra netram. Mahabaho bahubahu rupadam. Bahudaram bahudamshtra karalam. Drishtva loka pravyathitas tathaham. O mighty armed one, seeing your great form consisting of many mouths and eyes, many arms, thighs and feet, and many bellies, and fearful with many tusks, the worlds are awestruck, and so am I. 24. Nabhasprisham deeptamaneka varnam. Vyattananam deepta vishala netram. Drishtva hitvam pravyathitantaratma. Dhritim na vindami shamam cha Vishnu. O Vishnu, seeing you touching the sky, blazing, of many hues, with gaping mouths and large fiery eyes, I am frightened at heart, and I feel neither fortitude nor peace. 25. Damshtra karala nichate mukhani. Drishtva kala nalasannibhani. Disho na jane na labhe cha sharma. Prasida devesha jagannivasa. Seeing verily your mouths fearful with teeth and blazing like the fire of dissolution, I know not the cardinal points, nor do I find pleasure. O Lord of the gods, O abode of the universe, be merciful. 26. Ami chatvam dhritarashtrasya putraha sarve sahaiva nipala sanghaihi Bhishmo dronas sutaputras tathasau Sahasmadiyai yodha mukhyaihi 27. Vaktrani te tvaramana vishanti Damshtra karalani bhayanakani Kechit vilagna dashanantareshu Sandrishyante churnitairuttamangaihi All those sons of Dhritarashtra, along with hosts of kings, Bhishma, Drona, as also that charioteer's son, together with the principal warriors on our side, are entering in a rush into your terrible jaws, fearful with teeth. Some are seen sticking in the interstices of the teeth with their heads smashed. 28. Yatha nadinam bahavombuvegaha samudramevabhimukha dravanti Tatha tavami naraloka vira Vishanti vaktranyabhivijvalanti As many currents of water from rivers flow towards the sea alone, even so do those heroes in the world of men enter your mouths, flaming all around. 29. Yatha pradiptam jvalanam patangaha Vishanti nashaya samruddha vegaha Tathaiva nashaya vishanti lokaha Tavapi vaktrani samruddha vegaha As moths enter a blazing fire with great speed, only to be destroyed, even so are these people also entering into your mouths with great speed just to be destroyed. 30. Leli hyase grasamanas samantat Lokan samagran vadanair jvaladbhihi Tejo bhirapurya jagat samagram Bhasastavogra pratapanti Vishnu You are licking all these people on all sides while devouring them with your flaming mouths, filling the entire world with its radiance. Your fierce flow is scorching it, O Vishnu. 31. Akhya himeko bhavanugra rupo Namostu te deva vara prasida Vijñātu miccāmi bhavantamadhyam Nahi prajanami tava pravrittim Tell me who you are, O ferocious form. Salutations to you, O great God, be pleased. I like to know you. the primeval being, for I do not comprehend your inclination. So, what do you think about this? Sometimes you wonder when Arjuna requested Krishna, I want to see you as you are, whether this is what he signed up for. So when we say as spiritual seekers or hope, one day we will stand in the presence of the Lord. Is this what comes to your mind?
No.
It's pretty ferocious. You can see it's like, I mean, you can understand the presence of the way it's described, filled with many hands and mouths and belly, because entire Krishna, Arjuna sees the whole universe in the body of the Lord. So the immensity of the cosmic form is understandable. But then, as the description progresses, and you can see his whole mouth is filled with fire, and on all these great warriors, the Kaurava warriors, all of them entering into his mouth and just getting smashed against his teeth. It's pretty violent scene there. It's also one interesting thing it's kind of very subtle in some ways, is when Arjuna is describing what he's seeing and naming the warriors on the Kaurava side. You can see he mentions Bhishma, Drona, all of them by name, but Karna, he refers to him as the charioteer's son. You can see that kind of a disdainful look, and those of you who have studied the Mahabharata know the kind of chemistry these two characters had. So doesn't even name him by name, just said, oh, he's like a low-born. So would it be right to characterize this experience that Arjuna had, or the vision that Arjuna had, as representing the divine being in totality, or is it just one aspect of the divine being?
There's more?
I mean, it's pretty terrible. I mean, if this is all that God is, then I don't think then it doesn't seem very an attractive proposition to be in the presence of someone who is so terrible. So I think it's good to put all of this into context. For one thing, this is definitely no vision can comprise the totality of the divine, who is very infinite. What is described here actually is the destructive aspect of the divine. So, in general, one of the ways God is defined is that God is the source from which the entire creation emerges. So all of this has come from God, all of this dwells in God, and all of this goes back to God. So creation, sustenance, and then absorbing it back, which is another way of saying destroying what is there. All of these three things occur as a manifestation of God's power. It's through God's power that the entire world comes into being. It's through God's power that it is maintained, it sustains itself. And it's through God's power that it all returns to God. So there is a ancient Vedic hymn called Purusha Sukta. And maybe on some other occasion we'll take a closer look at it. That describes the creative aspect of the divine, how this entire world has come. So it's a very different kind of description of God there. And there are, in other places, in the Gita also, earlier chapters when Krishna describes about this whole cosmic sacrifice going on, how the world is preserved, how the world sustains. So in other places, we see the manifestation of God as a preserver, as a sustainer, as the one who maintains this universe. And what is being described here is this samhara, the destructive aspect of the divine. That how all of these things ultimately will go back to the divine. So that's the first thing to recognize. What we learn from this is that destruction is as much a part of the creative process. If something is constructed, it's going to be destroyed at some point. And luckily, it's not that just God just made this world and say, okay, now I have nothing more to do. So the idea is God is all that exists. So everything comes from God, dwells in God, and goes back to God. So whatever destruction that we see in this world, including death, all that is still happening in the reality that God is. And so I think this will become clear if we read the next verse, which is how when Krishna begins to speak. Or up to this point, it was Arjuna describing what he saw. So let's read the next verse, 32. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kalosmi Loka Kshayakrit Pravruddho Lokan Samahartumiha Pravrittaha Rite pitvam na bhavishyanti sarve Yeva sthita pratyanikeshu yodhaha. The blessed Lord said, I am the terrible time, the destroyer of people, and I am here proceeding to destroy them. Even without you, all these warriors in every division shall cease to be. So that is the second great lesson that we learn. What here, if you see the context, whatever doubt that Arjuna may have had in his mind, what is going to be the outcome of this war? In this vision he has seen, all these great warriors on the opposite side are already being devoured in this cosmic form. So first of all, that they are going to die. But more importantly, what Krishna is pointing out here is, even without you, all these warriors in every division shall cease to be. I think it's a very important point. And it is this. It's actually a perennial problem in some ways. And so you find a kind of a hint at finding a solution to it here. And it is this. When things happen, how many of the things that happen because we are responsible for it, and how many of the things that happen because God ordained it to be? And this is the age-old debate about self-effort versus predestination. That is, do we have any power to change the course of things, or everything God has already determined what is going to happen? Since it's an age-old problem, you can understand that there is much can be said on both sides. So what is your idea? How much control you have over the way things happen in our lives or in outside life? Yeah.
We consider ourselves.
Just a minute. Yeah, we'll get the Vikram. Yeah, since it's being taped, everyone needs to hear what you're saying. Yeah.
It depends on the dimension in which we see God. If we see God as the director and us as the actors and actresses in the stage of this world, then we will believe that God directs all of the acts and everything that is going on. But since we ourselves are part of God, then also with that free will as part of God, we have a choice of what happens in this earth. So it's interesting because God is the director, but we are also part of God.
So are we the directors or are we being directed? Yeah, it's a good point you have raised. Any other thoughts on this? Okay.
I mean, I can only share from my own experience, which even really, so I wouldn't have been able to change until I had found my path. Mm-hmm. And the way I found my path to learn some of these traits that you talked about, honesty, truthfulness, self-restraint, and so on, was from making mistakes and kind of messing up. So I sort of feel like it's predestined in a way to get me to what I'm supposed to learn in this life. And even the really difficult stuff that I think, even just last week something happened and I'm like, I should have known better. I know this stuff, but it had to happen for me to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Yep. Once again. Yeah.
I think also, because we have this intuition within us, I believe that we have the will to control, in a way, what we do individually, but what is around us, we don't have a decision on that. We cannot choose to end wars, but to bring peace to those around us. We can't choose to perhaps heal those whose lives are destined to end soon, but we can make better our lives and the lives of those around us. Mm-hmm. So in a way, we are given the choice to control what is immediately within us and what is around us. But other than that, other than what we know and what we see, that is up to God. That is up to others.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Good. Thank you for sharing your views. I think there's much to be thought about it. There's a lot of ways of understanding it. One way of understanding this is that what is happening, things that are going to occur, we probably don't have any control over it. This is one way of looking at it. Where we do have control is, how do I perceive it? For instance, now, if I have to stumble and fall, if that's what's going to happen, probably I'm going to stumble and fall. I'm going by this theory that that's probably my stumbling and falling down physically was probably preordained. But now, after falling down, whether then to kind of curse and get angry or to say, well, yes, I wasn't careful, I must be careful next time. So I can either get angry, I can either start cursing and blaming other people, or I can say, well, it's my mistake, I must be careful next time. Some people might think, well, maybe God is trying to tell me something. Maybe I needed this pain. Some people might think, well, if I'm experiencing this pain and suffering, then maybe I might have done something to deserve it. I'm just saying there are many different possible answers are possible just to this one event of me stumbling and falling down. And so one way of kind of harmonizing these two ways is to say, well, that stumbling and falling down was probably preordained. But my freedom lay in how I react or how I respond to it. That's one of the ways of looking at it. And that was a good point you brought out about a play and a director. So as long as, and this is from a very non-dualistic viewpoint, would be that as long as I see God as a being separate from me, then of course I'm the actor and God is the director. God is making, I'm like the puppet and God is the puppeteer. And so that's how those who are devotees, those who love God and see God as the one being who is the source from which they all come, they like to think that, well, I'm only an instrument. And one of the songs that Ramakrishna used to sing, and he often said that in his teachings as well, that I'm only a machine and God is the operator. And so if we recognize that and you see, it's like this. So a car, when you're driving a car is a machine and you are the driver. All will go well as long as your car remembers that it's only a machine. If your car begins to think, I'm a driver myself, then there's going to be a problem. Because then when you want to turn left, you want the car to do exactly what you want. If the car has a mind of its own, then you are in trouble. And so when we say that I'm a machine and God is the operator, it means then I should not have a mind of my own. But the problem is we already have a mind of our own. So somehow, if my own little will that I have, and there is the divine will through which everything is happening. Now, according to this way of understanding, things will happen only as Krishna says here, they are already, even without you, don't think that these people, you are going to kill these people. Even without you, these people are going to die. So if it's true that everything will happen through divine will, the problem is, what do I do with my own little will? And that is why sometimes we see in our lives, we plan to do things in one way. Sometimes they happen the way we expect them to happen. Oftentimes, our plans go one way and things that actually happen in a very different way. Now, one way of understanding that is, well, the way things happen, that was the divine will. When things happened the way I wanted them to happen, it means somehow, luckily, my will coincided with the divine will. That my will was somehow, luckily, it just happened to be that God also wanted it that way, and I also wanted it that way. But sometimes God wanted it a different way, I wanted it a different way, and of course, because this is God's world, so it's going to happen the way God wanted it. And so one of the prayers, also mentioned in that great little book called Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis. So one prayer would be that when you pray that, Lord, please make my will as close to your will as possible, because that's what's going to happen anyway. Now, a time will come when my little ego will completely vanish. And then I can truly say, well, I mean, a lot of us say even now, oh, everything in Mother's will and God's will. We just say it because really, all of us, like what you're going to have for dinner tonight, God doesn't come and tell you. You decide. Where you want to go for a vacation, you decide. So conveniently, sometimes we want to say it is all the Lord's will, but we just say it. So saying is different thing, but when we actually feel deep down, it's not simply intellectual, it's deep down in the heart that I'm not doing anything, that everything happens through God's will. When that happens, then we truly become instruments of God. And when we become instruments of God, we will not be able to take a wrong step. We will not be able to. The reason we do stupid things in life is not because God made us do it, is because our own little will came in the way. When that will goes out, if we are simply being directed by God, we will never take a false step. So that's one other point that we learn from this. Okay, first you and then you. Yeah.
But in the meantime, until that little self goes away, like I also find that when you sort of believe that he's in charge, I have more peace, because even when I mess up and stuff, I sort of feel like it's going to be okay. And I think in so many of the spiritual texts, you hear, don't worry, do not be afraid. I've got it covered. So it's more peaceful way to be too.
Sure.
Or to have inner peace, I guess.
Sure. This is, in fact,
And as a fellow Virgo warrior, that's been helpful to me.
yeah, that's why faith in God, again, the deep down faith in God is a source of tremendous strength and courage. It's just like a little baby. When a baby is with mother, the baby is not afraid of anything. My mom is there. So similarly, when we know that everything, we have that deep faith that God is in charge, then we are able to deal with the ups and downs in life in a much more better way, because God gives us that strength and courage to deal. Even when things go wrong, we know that God is there to help us, to protect us. So it does bring a lot of strength. Yeah.
Sometimes, however, God gives us the intuition to live the life that serves Him as an instrument to serve the divine being. And sometimes we are blessed to understand what that will is.
Sure.
However, we aren't patient enough to listen. And even though we are one with God's will, we are also still struggling with our own, because we are not patient enough to listen to what the next steps are. Even if we know what the goal is, sometimes it is difficult for us to grasp the next step towards it.
Oh, sure. That's no
So-
doubt, that's true.
What would you recommend? What would you say to better live God's will?
Well, there is not just one answer to that or what we should do. It depends on the temperament of the person who is facing this. So one way is through the path of complete surrender to the divine. That would be the path of devotion. Another would be to kind of try to think about it in a more as clear a way as possible, and that would be the path of knowledge or philosophy. A third way would be to just through works, to try to be unselfish and try to help others. That purifies our heart, and then we know what we should do. And fourth is through inner contemplation and meditation. So there are many ways through which this, what we want, can be achieved. And the Vedantic approach to that is, you refer to that, well, we have our own will or own thing. So that's one of the major hurdles, that so long as I say, well, that's God's will and this is my will. So long as I have separated myself from that divine, the greater the separation, the greater the fear, the greater the uncertainty. So the goal is to kind of find a way of first minimizing and then eliminating the gulf that separates me from God. And that can occur through love, through understanding, and we can see that. When we don't feel anything about total strangers, but then when we begin to love someone, then a kind of a bond is established. And so that's how that love for God establishes a connection with God. And as that love becomes more and more intense, God seems to come closer and closer to the devotee. And the ultimate being of close is you just don't feel that separation at all from God.
Sometimes if you are so close to God and to understanding Him, you feel like you are a stranger to this world, because it makes you, in a way, so different from those who do not recognize Him. But even then, it makes you content to be like
That's
a
very
stranger
true.
to this world.
Yep. Very true. Thank you. Yeah. So before we close, any other thoughts, ideas? Yep.
So Swamiji, could it also be that when you see that God's presence is so much, is awesome in compared to your small will, just even recognizing the vastness of that will give you perspective on your own will and self?
Sure, no doubt. Yeah. And also, in order to have a vision or experience of God, we must also be prepared for it. In some ways, as you will see later on in this chapter, Arjuna has had enough of this terrible form, and Arjuna says, "Oh, now please take it back, and let me just see you as you were in the normal form." And I sometimes wonder, why would Arjuna ask this divine form to be withdrawn? And it seems to me that you can see here, it was the divine I given by Krishna to Arjuna. It wasn't something that Arjuna kind of earned through his struggle, so to speak. So it was kind of given gratis. And knowing Krishna and knowing that he could see past, present, and future, we can see that he would have foreseen that Arjuna is not quite ready for it, but let him know that he is not yet ready for it. And that's why you see that this is not just one instance, you can see this happening in many other instances as well. You can see it in the life of Ramakrishna. Sometimes some of his disciples, there's Mathur Babu for instance, and one or two others. There was during that great incident, Kalpataru, on 1st of January, when he granted that great vision, and one of his disciple named Vaikuntanath, he was so blessed by that divine touch of Ramakrishna, he started seeing the divine everywhere. So he goes home, the divine everywhere. He goes to work the next day, it's divine everywhere. And after 3 days, he just goes to Ramakrishna and begs that, I'm not able to do anything. Please take away this form. Take away this experience. And then Ramakrishna withdrew it. All of this goes to show that it's not enough to simply want a divine experience. Because if we get a divine experience before we are ready for it, very likely we might be terrified by it. So it's good to pray that God, make me fit to receive your presence. Because if we are fit, if we are ready for it, then the divine being will come and it'll be perfect. But if you're not ready for it, then it's like this. It's like there is some delicious dish that is offered, but maybe you're not ready for it. Maybe your digestive system isn't yet perfectly is not in good shape. So no matter how wonderful that dish is, rather than bringing you joy, it's probably bringing you more pain. And so first is like, let me be ready, that make sure that I'm able to digest whatever it is that I'm eating, and then you can enjoy it. So just like that, we need the capacity to digest even spiritual experiences. If we don't have that capacity, then, once someone asked Holy Mother that, I forget the exact context in which that question was asked, but when Mother said that mangoes which are ripened artificially or out of season are not as sweet as mangoes which are ripened in a natural way. And therefore, while we would all want miracles to happen in our lives, which is great, but a gradual evolution, spiritual evolution, it's much more harmonious and smooth than suddenly things changing. Anything that is sudden is going to react very badly. Anyway, these are a few of the thoughts that come to mind, and there's a lot to think about, a lot to reflect on. So I would urge you, when we meet next week and continue with verse number 33, please, if you make an effort to go through this vision once again. See, as you read it, see what thoughts come to mind. Try to reflect a little bit on the ideas that were expressed today, and we will discuss more about it. This is a very, very important section in the book. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. Our subject for Sunday will be 2 dimensions of homelessness. So that will be the topic for satsang. Next Wednesday, we will meet at the same time, same place. And continue with the Gita. And on Tuesday and Saturday, we will continue with our Arti and meditation as usual. So you're welcome for these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3 of your books. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.